Welcome to our third Winter Gardens Community Conversations. I am Professor Vanessa Toulmin, Chair of the Morecambe Winter Gardens Preservation Trust and a Professor at the University of Sheffield. Today I am delighted to be joined by Matt Panesh, Founder and Director of the Morecambe Poetry Festival, and Andy Smith, Director of From the Fields Festival and also founder of Kendal Calling. The Morecambe Winter Gardens was known as the Albert Hall of the North, and in our conversations we will discuss future programming, current programming, and how our funding from DCMS and the Arts Council will enable us to have a future for the building as a performance venue. So this gives you some of the acts. So I've divided them into two. One, the first half of the slide is about some of the music acts that have appeared. As we don't have a full record, it's constantly finding out who these acts appeared, and it's amazing. Found out about Marianne Faithfull and Sandy Shaw recently. And then the other side of it is the variety acts, the performance side. So comedians, variety acts, the Goons, Harry Seacombe, Spike Milligan, Laurel and Hardy, but also circus and performance. So question is what do we bring back to the venue and what kind of shows we are going to programme for the next 3 years. Next slide. So in the 1930s, it's very much orchestra type, and one of the wonderful things is Mrs. Jack Hilton, who was the first wife of Jack Hilton, the famous impresario, composer, big band leader, and she was his first wife. And between 1933 and 1937, she had her own orchestra, Mrs. Jack Hilton and her boys, and she appeared at the Winter Gardens. So that gives you one aspect of a big dance orchestra, but that was more likely in the ballroom because the rake floor that we have in the theatre wouldn't have been conducive to dancing. Then we have the Halley Orchestra, who were there in the 40s and 50s. And then just another aspect of it is Layton and Johnson were a African-American jazz duo act who appeared in London in the 20s and 30s and were one of the most foremost jazz entertainers in the UK, kind of brought jazz in a way to the UK a lot earlier than people realise. And they appeared in the Winter Gardens and actually sold their records one of the local music shops. Next slide. And then we really get into the 50s and 60s when the Winter Gardens became part of the Moss Empire chain. And you suddenly see groups that we recognise or people of a certain age recognise. The Swinging Blue Jeans, you've got the Sandy Shaw, the Walker Brothers, and Marianne Faithfull. So basically in the 1960s, a lot of the new music was part of variety shows and variety bills. So if you read some of the biographies, autobiographies of Ringo Starr, any of the acts, they talk about how they would do a half-hour slot on a variety bill next to a ventriloquist or a kind of circus act or a trio. And these bills demonstrate that. So it's not the kind of music venue we see today where it's a 2-hour show, maybe a kind of warm-up band. Literally, they were sharing the bill with 7 or 8 acts, and they would be part of that Moss Empire chain. So in the 60s and the 64 to 67, the Winter Gardens had some of the greatest bands of the 1960s appearing on the stage. But we didn't have the Beatles. The Beatles appeared at the Floor Hall in Morecambe, not in the Winter Gardens. Next slide. And then, of course, the famous Who, the Incredible Who appeared. And then we can see the bill for the Rolling Stones, who, as you can see, are very much underneath the famously or unknown John Layton, the Swinging Blue Jeans, and kind of halfway down the bill. And the set was probably about half an hour at the time. The Who, when they appeared in 1966, was just before they became huge with their #1 song. And I would say for every person in Morecambe who's claimed to be at the Who concert, I could sponsor the whole refurbishment of the Winter Gardens. But I'm sure many people were there. Next slide. So then we also had Joey and the Pacemakers and the Animals on a double bill. That's the kind of programming you'd like to do now, isn't it? And then people like your compere, Don Spencer, and then the Walker Brothers return with the Dakotas. And again, it shows you how this very much, and if you look at handbills and posters from the time, this lineup is repeated at variety concerts all over the UK. So what does that mean for the Winter Gardens? So what we really want to do is to transform the theatre back into a music venue. We're working really closely with our architects and planning of this first phase of actually creating it to 1600 plus. That would be 1200 downstairs as an auditorium standing and 400 in the circle, while retaining the staging and performance and the staging for all types of performances. Something, and Matt and Andy can talk about that. It's largely capital. What is really important, and we all know this as event producers, toilets is one of the most important factors in understanding capacity. We've got a temporary toilet block at the moment, but we're currently putting new sound and lighting equipment. We've had an acoustic reading done for the venue. We're putting new windows, new backstage areas, and also, more importantly, reducing sound loss and heat loss at the back of the building. Next slide. So what do we need to do? So our KPIs in terms of the government funding, we need to increase engagement locally by 20%, increase people reach to 80,000 by 2026. That sounds really hard, but we actually had 50,000 visitors last year. And we've already had 12,500 since we opened for Easter. We're also going to be providing 75 vocational skills opportunities, and we also want to increase events by 2026 by removing infrastructure barriers. And the infrastructure barriers is something Andy and Matt really coped with by programming in the last 2 years. So when the theatre was closed and when everything happened, everything was stripped. There is no infrastructure in the theatre. There's no rigging potential. There's no sound and lighting. There's no AV. So all of this has to be reintroduced, safe, soundly, and structurally compatible with a Grade 2 star listed building. So what we're doing at the moment is putting in a stacked system, increasing the number of bars that you can fly equipment from, and putting in a medium-sized infrastructure, which is only about £120,000 of funding, but will start us on the way as a music venue. Next slide. So this tells you the new stage doors. New stage doors are really, really important because the loading at the back of the Winter Gardens is perfect. And I think we can talk about that. The new sound and lighting equipment. And this will enable accessibility for small producers locally, where the barrier for bringing into the Winter Gardens was the fact that we had no AV whatsoever. Just minimum AV just to bring in was about £2,000. And that enabling that equipment to be used by producers, promoters, local event managers is one of the really important things we want to do. The programming, the kind of high quality programming, calling on Matt and Andy to help on that. And then we've got a project team who are appointed, who are helping us do all the infrastructure changes we have to do. I cannot impress enough, as a Grade 2 star listed building, it really is really difficult just to get all this through planning, but we are very much on that journey. And then we've also got 4 posts who we've appointed and hopefully will be in post by the start of June. Next slide. So this is some of the events that we've had in our R&D period, and this shows you the kind of part of the building. So this is, Andy can tell you more, this is just an audience shot from the Levelers when we had about 950 people. And that was the first gig with the new capacity that we did a couple of years ago. And that was really important to us because it showed us all the issues that you don't actually know until you actually do a gig to work it out. So it was like an R&D. And then you can see above the circle and the gods. So that's actually only a half capacity, and we've got 1,000 people in. Next slide. And this is another view showing the stage. And this was a viewing platform that we did for accessibility issues. And that we hope in the second phase, when we've actually got the toilet block and the fire escape, and we'll have full accessibility seating on the circle of the building. And so the bottom will be completely standing. So we are working on the fact that the second stage, the circle area of the building, will have full accessibility in a lift and escapes and all the aspects that you need to make sure the venue's fully accessible for everyone who wants to come to a concert. Next slide. So this shows you some of the two amazing gigs, two of the highlights of the last 2 years for me, really. One side is Hawk Fest, which was produced by Matt, and the other side is the Levelers. And it just shows you just the potential that we have at the Winter Gardens. Another one, Matt will tell you who the photographer was, but it's an incredible night. One aspect that they didn't tell me about until after, that the legendary Arthur Brown decided to set fire to his hair on the stage. But we had two of my fire officers with fire extinguishers and fire blankets to the side, and it conformed to all health and safety. But Matt didn't tell me that till after. I think he knew I'd freak out. Okay. And then just another type of things that we programmed over the last 2 years. Obviously, the Morecambe Poetry Festival, which Matt is the programmer and director of, but then Spooky Choir. And that shows you different. So we've seated downstairs, so we can seat. We're working out the configurations, but we hope we can seat about 600 to 700, maybe even 800 downstairs. And we'll have 400 upstairs. So even seating and stand, all seated, will be 1,200. And that was the Australian Spooky Choir. Next slide. And then we had, obviously, Johnny from Northern Silence talked about it in our last meeting. We had the incredible Big House and Maastricht Brass Band with a premiere of the film Echoes of the North. So an incredible brass band, and that was amazing. 500 people came to see that. And in June, we will be returning to silent film and live music, because the Winter Gardens was the very first venue that showed silent film in Morecambe in 1897, interspersed with trapeze acts flying from the ceiling, but we're not going to be doing that this next month. So we have Charlie Chaplin, the Kid, with a full orchestra. So a full orchestra will return back to the Winter Gardens for the first time in over 50 years. And that's on the 7th and 8th of June, and I'll put the details. So the biggest issue we've had as a venue is this incredible ceiling. And this incredible ceiling is fibrous plaster. And in 2014, the Shaftesbury Avenue Theatre collapse of the ceiling, caused by the vibrations from the sound acoustics, and resulted in every theatre in the country, or every venue in the country that has a fibrous plaster ceiling, to be checked. And in 2017, the Winter Gardens ceiling was condemned. And it wasn't until 2019, when I became chair, that we started to look at this. And on a very technical viewpoint, every one of those incredible plasters is about 10 foot by 6. Every one of them is acoustically designed for the acoustic waves of the building, and they're held up by hemp rope. And those hemp ropes deteriorate or are actually sliced through the modern bass sound system. So £680,000 has been spent on that ceiling, cleaning it, replacing it, and putting 1,250 steel wires. And that was completed about 6 weeks before the levelers came in. Andy can talk about the stress that we had with that. Got it all checked, and therefore allowing us to increase the fire capacity of the building of what it was at the time, 699 up to 969. So that ceiling gets checked every year. A company comes and literally walks the inside of the ceiling, checks it all, and that's part of our ongoing maintenance. But that is the glory of that ceiling, and that's really why it was called the Albert Hall of the North, because of that ceiling. And each panel is designed to reflect the acoustic waves of the music in the venue. Next slide. So this shows you what we have to work on now. This is the circle and the gods. Many people locally remember the gods. Now, before 1953-54, those gods were benches, and that shows you why so many more people could go in. And in the 1950s, Moss Empire introduced proper chairs back into the gods, and they're still there. You can see they're quite steep, unparalleled view. I don't know why they were the cheap seats, but you do get a sense of height and giddiness when you're at the top there. So that will not be this stage of the building. That'll be stage 3 when we get further funding to open up the top of it and to understand. But the extension will go to the 3rd floor, so all the infrastructure will be in there to make that part of the building conform to modern health and safety standards. Next slide. So that shows you what a full capacity Winter Gardens looked like in 1947. You can see the gods with the benches. You can see literally why I would say the capacity ranges from 2,300 to 3,000. There's probably twice as many people in the gods as there are in the circle. So even if you just count the heads, there's probably about 800 people sat like sardines at the top of the building. Then the kind of really, really classy, expensive seats on the circle, and then the stalls. Unfortunately, the stalls seats were taken and never replaced, but that actually gives us the flexibility to have a music venue that is both standing and seating and different types of configuration. So that actually works in our favour now. As many of you will know, the Friends of the Winter Gardens did a campaign 3 years ago to return the chairs, and we now have all the chairs that were originally in the circle. And once the working stage of done is complete in March 26, they will all be reinstated with all the wonderful names of all the people who sponsored them. And at the moment, we've configured 400, and we're hoping to get another 50 in, but it all depends on the accessibility plan. Next slide. So obviously, some of our creative programmers, So as you know, we've done the front of the building. The last presentation we did was all about that. Our wonderful concert hall style entrance is now ready to welcome you all. We can't really change any aspect of this other than repair it. So that gives us a capacity for the front of the building about 450 to 475. So that is our main fire escape on a practical health and safety basis, but it is stunning. So this is what welcomes you when you come into the building. And what we're hoping with the front of the building done now, we can start the programming when we get all the infrastructure in. Next slide. So these are some of our creative partners, and it's my real pleasure to introduce, next slide. That's fine. I'm happy to take any questions, but if people don't have any questions, I'm really, really delighted to introduce Matt Panesh from the Morecambe Poetry Festival, who can talk about the work he's done in the Winter Gardens and future ideas.
Hi, thank you, Vanessa. Just quickly, are there any questions for Vanessa where we are? Or shall I go ahead? Right, I'll take that as I'm going ahead then. Yeah, so I've been involved with the Winter Gardens. We did a community theatre show there called Lost Voices of the Morecambe Winter Gardens, which was great, absolutely great. And it highlighted a couple of the issues that there are, which are mainly sound and light. After that, we got Hawkwind in to do their Hawk Fest, and they brought in their own sound equipment. They also brought in their bands, and we ran it as a music festival with Johnny's Next Door as the second stage. And that gave me the idea for the Poetry Festival, in which I've kept to that same formula. We've got the headliners on at the Winter Gardens. One of the major expenses for me from that was sound and light. So with that expense gone, that really does open the gates for us. This year's Poetry Festival is the biggest and best yet. We've got Panesh come in, and Mike Hardin and various others. I think the big thing for me is the fact that the BBC are coming, and that's going to really put the Winter Gardens on the map nationally. So BBC are going to be opening the Poetry Festival with recording Loose Ends on Radio 4. And then on Radio 3, their flagship spoken word programme, The Verb, is going to be recorded on the Saturday. And those are free of charge events. You know, they're just open for the town to come in and get involved, which is just wonderful. For that weekend, we will be the most important literary festival in the country, which is just staggering, really, considering they rang me up. And I was a bit like, yeah, okay. So that's great. I really do think now is Morecambe's in the ascendant. Everything that I seem to be involved with is growing, whereas if you look at music venues across the country and actually the state of the nation, people are in precarious positions and venues are closing down, which, because we're rising up, I think puts us in a really good position, a really good position. I'm relaunching the comedy festival next year, so we've got Justin Morehouse performing, and we've also got Arthur Smith and a variety of others. But once we get to that 1,600 size, there are comedians that can fill those spaces. And traditionally, even though it has been sort of musics that play the stadiums, nowadays it is more and more comedy as well. So I think for us, the main thing is create an event with headliners that people will flock to come to, just like the Victorians had it. It's a destination town, but also, really importantly, put the infrastructure in for the local people to get involved and local people to take part, whether that's on stage, which is through my fringe festivals and so on, or whether that's helping with the technical side of things, which is the Young Creatives program that Vanessa will be doing. And that's probably it from me, really, unless anyone's got any particular questions. I'm just really excited to be really part of it. As I say, this journey is definitely increasing. Yeah, any questions at all?
Thanks, Matt. Do you want to talk about some of the issues we faced in terms of the building? I'd rather you be honest, because I think people need to understand that it is a kind of, there's no facilities.
There is absolutely no facilities. Backstage is actually, it's a lot better now than when we first did the Winter Gardens, and there's heating now, which is very, very good, because yes, there wasn't heating before, and it was brutally cold. That's been the nice thing about this, is that people and performers have seen improvements to the building, and they will do this year, and they like returning to the place. Hawkwind got a guided tour of the building and said, you know what, we love it, we want to come back, let us know when the improvements are going on, etc. And I've been keeping them informed as to all of the little bits that are going on. So that for me is one of the most important things, is that people can see progress being made. And a hat tip to Vanessa there, actually, because really that keeping everybody informed and logging every sort of pound being spent, you can see where the pounds are being spent, which is brilliant. Tech wise, having lights is going to be so important, because really there was one bar where you could hang lights from. It's all been very, very basic, to say the least, and we've had to bring in lots of lights. So that is going to be instrumental again. And as I said, saving money for me, it brings down the cost. Hawkins sound desk was well over, it was about £2,000, I think, £2,500, including the technician, the equipment being brought in. And that's an onerous sum of money when you're operating a festival. If you've got that equipment inside already, then you're just much more attractive at the times when people's margins are getting tighter and tighter and tighter.
I think also as well, Matt, you've really kind of brought on local talent, and what we want to do is bring local bands and local talent, and it almost be like a kind of grassroots music venue as well, because that's really important.
Absolutely. At the Poetry Festival, I had takeovers last year. So we had a Scouse takeover, a Geordie takeover, and so on, which was highlighting people from around the country. And this year, we're having a Morecambe takeover, which I think is massively important, and it gives those people the opportunity to be on the main stage. That idea of an import and export, because obviously Morecambe's in the Bay, but I had because I was focused on the West End and what it was called the Harbour Ward, I had an idea of an import-export thing. So we're building up local people to export their skills to the world and to showcase their skills, as well as welcoming touring bands and performers in, and putting them on the same space is just vitally important.
Yeah. So what we've been doing for the last 2 months is doing surveys of the kind of acts that people want to see in the Winter Gardens. And we're hoping that working with the young creatives, we can get a more vibrant programme that appeals to 18 to 35-year-olds as well. Mm-hmm. So somebody who knows that market really well. Thank you for that. That was brilliant and inspiring as ever. Thank you, who knows that audience really well. So can I introduce Andy Smith, who is, again, local regional producer from, I'll let Andy introduce himself, but Andy gave us the opportunity to have the levelers in the Winter Gardens. It was a very fraught few weeks, but hopefully as a future programmer and somebody who works nationally, and has had amazing bands from all over the world at Kendal Calling and Blue Dot. He can talk about the potential and why he's excited about the Winter Gardens. Over to you, Andy.
Thank you very much. I'm Andy. I'm based 9 miles north of Morecambe in the small village of Arnside, where I grew up, and I run From the Fields. We are an event organizer. We're responsible for a variety of outdoor events, primarily from Christmas light trails such as Christmas at Bute Park in Cardiff, or we've got a similar one up in Newcastle and one down in Leeds, to citywide arts festivals such as Bournemouth Arts by the Sea. But music is our first love, and where we began 20 years ago with Kendal Calling. So being a big fan of music, Kendal Calling was my attempt to bring musicians that I love to our part of the world. Sorry, my lights are going haywire. Don't know why. Never mind, looks like I'm in a disco. Kendal Calling was our attempt to bring music to Cumbria that otherwise we'd have to travel to Manchester for. It was a great success the first year. We brought in Pendulum, who were #1 in the charts at the time. And it was a great success. People were very happy. It's grown over the last 20 years from 900 people to 40,000 people for one sun or more often rain-filled weekend each summer. We are, according to the Met Office, the wettest festival in the country. And we've had the opportunity to work with bands such as Blondie, the Halley Orchestra, Snoop Dogg, Bjork, Tom Jones, Mumford & Sons, and many others over our time. But Kendal Calling is just one weekend a year. You spend 12 months planning for it, and before you know it, it's over, and you've got to wait another year for it to happen. So we've been really interested in getting into concerts for a number of years, something to keep ourselves busy, but also to bring more music to the area. And it's been very frustrating for quite some time. We've had a number of agents down in London, the artists' representatives, getting in touch saying, we've got a band that's travelling from Manchester up to Glasgow. We'd love to play somewhere in Cumbria or North Lancashire. Do you have a venue? And getting artists is quite difficult because there's always a lot of competition. So it's ridiculous to us when we have to turn around and say, there aren't the venues, there isn't the capacity for the artists that you want. We've had people like the Stereophonics, the Kooks, Edris Elba, James, have all been in touch wanting to play a concert, but they needed a venue that was at minimum 1,000 capacity. And there are some great venues, the Brewery Arts Centre or the Platform in the local area, but they are too small a venue to attract the household names, the bands that you regularly hear on the radio. And that's what I think our area is missing. And that is what the Winter Gardens is going to be able to provide. A fantastic location, a fantastic venue that will be able to attract audiences from all the way up to Barrow and Furness and all from Preston above to come and see these household names. Vanessa mentioned that we had the Levelers. That was a brilliant show. So that came about because a number of years ago we finally had the opportunity to put a concert in the town hall in Lancaster. We put Frank Turner on there the first time. It sold out in a few minutes, which was brilliant. As a promoter, it's always great to have a sold out show. But moments later, my phone was blowing up with all my friends getting in touch saying, hey, we missed out on tickets. Are there any more tickets? And it's a real shame when you've got all these people locally who want to come and come to the concert, but you've just not got the capacity for it. But we got approached by a few different artists who also wanted to play the town hall. So we got the Levelers booked in. But then after we announced it and went on sale and it sold out, the town hall got in touch and said they're actually concerned about the plaster work, which similar situation really to the Winter Gardens. And we would have to undertake a survey to see if the concert could happen there. That was back in late 2019. And the survey has yet to take place to this day, to my knowledge. So we'd sold the show out and we needed another venue. And fortunately, the Winter Gardens by this point had got to the stage where it could host a concert. And that was really brilliant news because the last thing we wanted to do was to turn around to the 1,000 or so people who bought tickets for the Levelers and say, sorry, we'll have to cancel the show. But also more exciting because this is a great way to test the venue and see what is needed. And one of the first things we realised was just the expense of the sound and lighting and bringing that into the venue for these artists. So to give an example, I'm not a technical person, and sound propagation throughout a venue is incredibly technical, from my understanding. So because of the space with its 3 tiers of area, you have to bring in a PA system which can fill this whole room. So it might be a room for, it's designed to have 3,000 people in there, but due to fire at the moment, fire escapes, etc., it can only have 1,000. But you still need a PA system that can fill the volume of a room that's set up for 3,000 people. So you need a PA system that's going to cost 3 times the amount of the tickets that you can sell, if that makes any sense. So basically, we got a quote back for £15,000 to do the sound and lights, well, to do the sound for the levelers, which was terrible. That would, see the concert lose about £15,000. We were very fortunate in that the band ended up having their own equipment, their own sound equipment, which they took on tour. So that saved the show. But if it wasn't for that, again, the show would have had to have been cancelled. And sadly, that would also make all future concerts that we could organise at the Winter Gardens unviable, because these days, live music is the primary income stream for artists. It used to be that they'd go on tour to market and advertise the record they were releasing, but now there's no money in records. Now the records are marketing for the tour. It's kind of turned on its head. So money is everything to the artists, and they look to maximise their income from touring. So we need to be able to offer them a great deal of money. And if all of that money is going on the cost of the sound and the sound equipment, there is no money left for the artist. So what's really important in the next step is getting that sound equipment in there, so that we've got the revenue left to be able to book the artists. And very excited to hear that that's coming to fruition. That's all I think I've got to say.
Andy, can you mention something about the backstage and how we learnt about the electrical supply and that you need all the backstage access, because that's what's really useful about the Winter Gardens, isn't it? Because you can load onto the back.
That's absolutely true. So not to talk too much about the town hall, for instance, over in Lancaster, but one of the issues that was there is that it's up 2 flights of stairs and there wasn't a lift. And it was Frank Turner's tour manager who was talking about it, and just saying, we want this to be a great venue ongoing in the future, but the problem is the crews are going to hate it. No one's going to enjoy playing here. The artist really wants to keep their tour crew happy. And the important thing is having an easy load in and an easy get out, because these are artists who are turning up at 7 a.m. and then packing down again at midnight and getting off to the next venue. They have a very hard life. So if you want the artists to enjoy the show, and you really do, because that will make sure they will tell their friends and they will tell their friends, and then you'll have people queuing up to play. The best thing that one can do is make it simple and easy for the crew. And the way that it's set up now with will be with the new stage doors, it's going to be absolutely fantastic. It's going to be the smoothest get-in, as they call it, set up for artists pretty much in the country. I can't imagine anywhere that could be simpler. I can't remember regarding the electrical what the issue was there. I wasn't actually the event manager for that show, but
you went to put a 3-phase for the back for the touring bus. So we hadn't thought about that the actual touring bus itself needed the electrics externally to plug into.
You're absolutely right. Yeah. So because the artists are taking the stage down, they're packing their equipment away at midnight, but then they'll be loading into the next venue at 8 a.m. the next day. They will be sleeping on a bus. That's what generally happens. I'd say 95% of the artists we work with will be travelling via large double-decker coach. And that's because they can't afford all of it. They don't have the time, but also the expense of staying in hotel rooms for their 10 or 12 crew they might have. So it's very important that they've got a safe parking and with good facilities and also power to keep the bus powered so it can be heated and they can have their games consoles and whatever keeps them entertained all day.
Yeah, so that was one of the things we found. That was what was really important about doing the levelers, and I think Matt will discuss about that as well when we did Hawk Fest. Actually having the big car park at the back, or the car park at the back, which was enclosed, and we could have the heating. And also, Andy and I had quite an anxious time about working out toilet capacity, didn't we? So that was really important.
Yeah,
Having
very
toilet
much
block.
so. Yeah, again, it's about making the experience as good as possible for the audience as well, because we are competing with venues as far afield as Manchester, which is where people are used to going to for their concerts. So that's one of the other small hurdles that are going to be faced in the future is getting people in the local area used to coming to concerts. It's not something that they're currently used to doing to the extent that we'll want them to be. So when we do come out with a program, it's going to be important not to oversaturate it at first, and that'll take a bit of time just to get people just used to, get that in as a thing that people do.
Yeah, and one of the things I think Andy pointed on is when you're looking at the green touring route, so a lot of bands now are wanting to kind of be more economical about where they travel. So what we're looking at is being that middle point between Manchester and Glasgow. And that's what makes the Winter Gardens really, really beautiful. One of the things we've talked about, the problems we face, we've talked about the sound, the lighting, the equipment, but essentially Andy and Matt demonstrate that the future of the Winter Gardens, the potential of the Winter Gardens is right in a way that the music is something, and music and performance and short-term one-night gigs and stopovers, rather than a 3-week run, which is what it used to be, or a week run, is really the kind of economic viability, would you say, Andy and Matt?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. And just to say, just going back on the backstage entry, just in the festival environment of band after band after band after band, which is what happened with Hawkfest, the entrance was just fantastic. So everybody could get set up, and it just went like clockwork. Actually, in that capacity, it was a really good 3-day festival. But yeah, from as you say, from Manchester to Glasgow to Edinburgh, it's perfectly situated.
That's great. So do we have any questions from the audience, please? And Matt and I and Andy can chat about sound and lighting and toilets for another 10 minutes, but I'm sure you want to get any ideas of what kind of bands you'd like to see in, or do you think our vision for the venue, and it is a shared vision. I wouldn't have had this vision enacted because actually doing real live R&D, from everything from fire alarms to capacity. And I think Andy in particular, we learned a lot, didn't we, about how we separate standing and seating. That especially the kind of viewing platform we had to put in for the Winter Gardens was an additional expense, wasn't it? So having accessibility areas in the circle is a really good move, isn't it, to separate that?
Yeah, that's going to be vital, because every expense eats away at the money. It's amazing how quickly you've got an income of 30,000, and before you know it, you're in the red, even though you sold all the tickets. We want to be. We don't often have the opportunity with touring artists to set our own ticket prices. That'll be coordinated by the agent in London. They'll come to you and say, "I want to see an offer on this pound ticket," and they'll set the ticket price for the whole tour. So if you can't be competitive, then they overlook and they go elsewhere.
Yeah, well, I think the beauty of the Winter Gardens in the next 2 years, at least, we have the flexibility to support acts and to kind of look at how we do it, because some of the money we have is to program to kind of offset some of the risks that the promoters take. So that's looking fortunate to that. Do we have any questions, please, from the audience, from people who've come? And are people excited about what we see as the future of the Winter Gardens? So I'll ask Andy a question. What is the person? My dream, and you know this, is the Halley Orchestra appeared in the Winter Gardens in the 40s, and I'm really excited that you have a link and I have a link with them. Don't you think it would be wonderful? Do you think there'd be an audience locally to bring the Halley Orchestra back to Morecambe?
Oh, I think it'd be brilliant. Yes, absolutely. Very much up to that. We've worked with them a few times down at the down at Jodrell Bank Observatory. We did a fantastic event there once where we had Planet Earth projected onto the dish, and the Halley Orchestra doing the soundtrack. So I worked with them a number of times, but it would be brilliant to bring them up and see them in a concert hall setting, especially with the sound quality that you get in the room.
Yeah, I mean, I should say we kind of talked about the issues of sound equipment, but the sound quality is quite superb. When we finally got the mix right, I think both bands were impressed by that, weren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do we have any ideas? We can't really say what future acts. I mean, Matt's told you about his program, which is really exciting. Andy's coming into the venue soon to kind of start booking, because it's a long tail in terms of booking, isn't it, Andy?
It really is. So the way that it works with a lot of the music agents in London is that they are incredibly protective over their artists. If their artists have a bad experience, they often find themselves sacked, and the artist chooses a different agent. It's a very difficult world for them, from what I understand. So they're incredibly protective. So you've got to build up trust. They'll probably want to send us.
Yeah, well, we've got a question about folk music. I think both of you have worked in that field, so we really any local acts that want to start thinking about coming into the Winter Gardens as part of an R&D, please tell us to contact us. We will very soon have an events manager and venue manager and programmer who'll be working with Andy and Matt and myself to look at acts that can come in. We do have issues about the building work, but we're working around that. But we'll definitely be open until the end of November this year to look at continuing our R&D. So any ideas about folk music, Matt, Andy? Is that an area you know about?
Not from me, to be honest. I know it as a fan, but yeah, as apart from bringing people in, I'm not too sure. I'll defer to Andy on that.
But well, the thing we've done with Kendal Calling is we wanted it to be something that all ages could enjoy. I grew up in a small village, and the idea was that we want everyone in the village to come along and enjoy it. So we're not wedded to any particular genre of music. Dance music, hip hop, orchestras. We'll work with anything that makes people happy. Our job is selling tickets, and if we sell tickets, that's because we've got a happy audience. So we've worked with Billy Bragg and Donovan before, and we'll be very excited to see what can come. It would be brilliant to get Kate Rusby there.
Yeah, and well, she's a local girl, Barnsley, so we know her. So yeah, and very held, and Sheffield has a very, very vibrant folk scene, so I'm sure we can discuss that kind of future programming. And also Billy Bragg would be great, would be that kind of wonderful sound. I think the idea is that we want to try and see what sells locally. Just to let everyone know, but also Andy and Matt, I've got the up-to-date figures from the audience agency of where people are watching and looking at in the area. So I've done a comparison of the 6 Morecambe wards and the regional. So I'll share that both with you, so it gives you an understanding of where people are going to. Keep on putting suggestions in the chat. We can try and reach for the stars and land on the moon if you want, but it's really just a case of getting the infrastructure in, getting all the capacity aspects, and trying things. We've got 2 years, we've got closure periods, we've got to look at what we can do. I know I keep on mentioning it and I get a bit boring, but toilets are a major issue in events. Capacity in terms of seating and standing are a major issue, but we're getting there, and we hope people. Yeah, I'm sure we can invite. Philip's asked the question again. I'm sure we can invite the people from Happy Mount Park to come and talk to us. As I say, the equipment's going in, or we've also can bring equipment in while we're in this intermediate stage. That's really what it is. One of the interesting things is that when they took all the infrastructure out of the Winter Gardens, there would have been 34 bars to fly. So we're kind of doing a structural analysis. The equipment that's going in is going to be a stack system. So you kind of did this partly as well, didn't you, for Kendal Court, for levelers, where we stacked it in front of the stage and put it in the boxes. We've had all the bars tested around the auditorium for the lights, Matt, so that's good. So what we do hope that, 120,000 sounds a lot, but it's not. but it will get you to a medium stage. And then we'll get future funding to keep an increase in the capacity in terms of the sound and lighting. But what we will want to do, what we'll do in the winter, is get the actual grid tested so we can put more bars on. So maybe up to 10 or 12 more bars. But I'll take advice from both of you about how many more bars you would like to see on the stage. Because that grid hasn't been checked since 1897. Yes, yeah. And we've also got funding to do the Association of British Theatre Technicians sound and light and rigging courses. So we will be opening that to young people, but also people involved in the events industry who want to kind of get a bronze level diploma. And that's a free course that we'll be doing, hopefully at the Winter Gardens and other venues locally, just to give people that technical. Because one of the things we've all found, and I'm an event producer in Sheffield, the lack of technical people. So many people, about 25-30% left the industry, didn't they, Andy, after COVID? So there's still a massive skill shortage in that area.
Yeah, that's been something that we've found at the festivals. It's been tricky getting people back because it's a wonderful industry to be in. But then when you get a bit older and maybe you've got a family and such, and then you find out that going on tour for 3 months of the year is just quite difficult. So everyone had a year or two at home, and then just a lot of people never returned.
Well, also a lot of people left high and dry during COVID. A lot of the freelancers in particular were really affected. So I think that's an important thing to emphasize, that we want to build a local talent area, not just for acts, but for production and technical. That local people shouldn't have to leave to learn these skills elsewhere. I had to leave, my niece had to leave. We want to have that talent pool available so that they can go on and be like Andy in 20 years' time, set up their own festival somewhere. That's the story we want to develop. Yep. So apart from folk music and Kate, I'm sure we can discuss that, Andy. That is, their festival in Barnsley is probably the poshest festival I've ever been to. Thanks again. This is our last community conversations in this series. We've talked about young creatives, we've talked about the architecture and the actual physical planning in the building, and now we've talked about music and performance. I'll just let you know, Matt, the last comedian to play in the Winter Gardens was Billy Connolly, so you've got a hard act to follow there. How do you plan to increase publicity of acts? One of the things that's really exciting is that as part of this project, we've got 4 new posts that have been appointed in the last week, and they'll be revealed in the next 3 weeks. So we have an event and production person who will be involved in running the venue and booking and working with all the promoters. We also have a digital marketing officer, part-time, because we are in that process of moving on. We'll also have a volunteer coordinator because the venue is still run by volunteers. So while we've got this exciting program coming in, every weekend we open, and that pays the money to keep the venue running. The money we get from government does not pay for the venue, it pays for the work. So we still do our teas and coffees. We've got a local band coming in on Sunday, a trio just doing a bit, half an hour entertainment, and that raises money for the building. So digitally, we've got a digital marketing person who will promote. We'll work with the promoters to get that locally. And, Matt is a one-man promotion company himself. So tickets, I think my attitude is, if you build it, they will come. If you put the right acts on, people will come. I think Matt's demonstrated that with the Poetry Festival. Andy demonstrated that with the Levers. Yeah, it had already sold out, but they would have had. And I think working with local tourism, Lancaster Council, working with Marketing Lancashire, Creative Lancashire, and working nationally, and also with the band's promoters, that should be. Gone are the days when I was younger, I used to illegally fly post around the town. I don't know if we can still do that, but yeah, there is an element of that. I know how to get a poster inside a window without going into a venue, but I'm not going to tell you how I do that. It's an old trick, isn't it?
Daisy chaining, yes.
Yes.
I met a few circus people on the streets one day when I was doing my own fly postering, and they taught me how.
Yeah, well, being from the fair, it has that benefits, yeah. The best fly posters are circus agents. There's no doubt about it. No doubt about it. I was laughing one time when they actually managed to fly poster inside the Winter Gardens, and I had to exchange a few pleasantries with them to tell them not to do it. But they recognised me in the end, and so they took them down. Yeah. I wouldn't have minded, but it was for a circus not in Morecambe. Right, I think I'm going to draw an end to this. Philip, thank you. If you want to contact us about the folk acts, my email is chair@morecambewintergardens.co.uk, or send it into any of the emails that's online, or contact us afterwards. Everyone who registered will receive a copy eventually in the next few weeks of the digital assets. And Andy and Matt, I'll see you back in Morecambe or Sheffield. Thank you for taking part.
Thank you.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.